Hey guys, tonight we begin in the fog-draped stillness of medieval Japan. The bamboo groves are barely visible in the early morning hush, and the cold mist clings to your robes like the quiet itself has turned into dew. A faint creak, just once, betrays the motion of a bow being drawn in the courtyard. Not yours. Not yet. You stand barefoot on the smooth, chilled wood of the DJ floor. Your breath clouds slightly, then disappears. The hush is so deep it seems to absorb every little sound before it can reach your ears. No wind, no birdsong, no idle chatter, only the weight of stillness, cultivated like moss on ancient stone. This is the first morning of your life as an apprentice of the bow. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. I love reading those. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You were brought here the previous afternoon, led by an uncle who didn't speak a word the entire way, as though talking might dissolve the whole idea. The journey ended at a small compound nestled in a quiet valley. The outer walls were unpainted wood. The gate had no lock. You knocked once. Someone slid it open from inside without a word and waved you in. You crossed the threshold and haven't spoken since. Your first night passed on a futon in a narrow room that smelled faintly of cedar and candle wax. You barely slept, not because of nerves exactly, though those were present, but because the quiet was unnatural, unmodern. There were no distant wheels, no footsteps, no dogs barking, not even the flapping of birds. It was a kind of silence that felt trained. Morning began not with a bell or a command, but with the sound of someone pouring water slowly, carefully into a wooden basin. That was your cue. You step into the practice hall with 5 others, all around your age, dressed in plain indigo training robes. No one greets you. No one meets your eyes. You all take your places on the polished boards, kneeling in a row facing a narrow strip of open air where the courtyard begins. The sensei is already seated at the far end, facing the garden, unmoving. His posture is so still he might be a sculpture of himself. Next to him rests a bow taller than he is, and next to that, a small rack of arrows fletched with pale goose feathers. You sit in silence. The others seem to know what to do. They don't fidget. They don't glance around. They breathe with long, measured patience. You try to match their rhythm, but your knees hurt and your back itches. After what feels like a very long time, the sensei shifts, just slightly. He turns his head and looks at the rack of bows. That's it. No words, no gesture. But within seconds, the other students rise quietly, fluidly, and go to take their bows. You follow. The training bow is long, asymmetrical, and wrapped in faded cloth at the grip. It's heavier than you expected, but not burdensome. You lift it like you've seen in the scrolls, 2 hands respectful, keeping it close to your chest like an heirloom sword. The first lesson begins, standing still. You don't shoot. You don't knock an arrow. You simply stand, bow in hand, feet shoulder-width apart, body facing sideways to the imaginary target beyond the edge of the porch. You stay like that for a long, long time. The sensei walks behind each of you in turn, saying nothing. Occasionally he stops and adjusts someone's elbow. Once he pulls down a shoulder with 2 fingers. His hands are dry, light, and cool, like stones kept in shadow. When he reaches you, you brace, expecting correction, but he moves on without touching you. You exhale too loudly. His footsteps stop. You hear them pivot, and he returns. You feel, rather than see, his eyes on the back of your neck. You do not exhale again. Later, you're taught the ritual of yugame, the posture of readiness. It begins with placing the bow to your side, aligning your hips with the target, lowering your center of gravity slightly, not by crouching, but by imagining roots growing from your soles into the earth. You're told to relax your shoulders, though no one tells you how. You just have to figure it out by being corrected when you're wrong. The silence is never broken. There's no counting, no shouted hi like in the kabuki plays. You all move as if choreographed by trees. Bow raised, arrow knocked elbow high, tension in the string. Breath held not out of strain, but because you've learned that breathing makes noise. You do not release the arrow. Not today. This entire day is dedicated to the draw. You repeat the movement 100 times. Draw and hold. Draw and hold, while your arms tremble and your back aches and your breath becomes a steady prayer for stillness. The sound of your own heartbeat becomes a metronome. And then, just before dusk, you're allowed to loose a single arrow. It does not go well. The moment of release, your wrist flinches, and the bowstring slaps your sleeve with a sharp crack. The arrow arcs drunkenly, veers hard left, and sticks into the wooden frame of the courtyard awning. No one reacts. No one sighs. No one even glances. You walk, retrieve your arrow, and return to your place. That is the way. Dinner that evening is rice, pickled radish, and warm barley tea. Still no one speaks. There's something about the food, the warmth of the tea on your sore jaw, that makes the whole world feel weightless. Not empty, just quiet enough to hear your thoughts arranging themselves. When night falls, the compound dims, and you lie back on your futon. Your body hums with fatigue, your fingertips still tingle from the pressure of the bowstring. You think of the missed arrow, you try to laugh at yourself, but remember no sound. So you smile into the dark, and let the silence have its way. That night, you dream of a grove where arrows bloom from the trees like blossoms. The sensei stands at the center, eyes closed, one finger raised to his lips, not in warning, but in blessing. And in the dream, you understand it. You wake before the bell, not that it ever rings. Your body aches in places that yesterday you didn't know could ache, between your shoulder blades, across your thighs, inside the bones of your fingers. The futon underneath you is slightly damp from the cold of the floor, and the air tastes like wood smoke, though you haven't seen a fire since you arrived. The others are stirring as well, quietly folding bedding, adjusting robes, preparing in the way that doesn't require language. Today is your second day with the bow. You shuffle silently into the courtyard where a thin veil of fog still clings to the hedges. The training hall is already open, the floorboards freshly swept. No footprints. That in itself feels like a kind of pressure. You'll be the one to mar the perfection. The sensei is again seated, already in posture. Legs folded beneath him, eyes open but unfocused. You take your place. The bow is already there, lying across two supports like an offering. You bow to it because you've seen the others do it, and kneel. Every movement is slow and deliberate. No one rushes, no one speaks. There's something about this repetition, the slowness, that starts to feel holy. Today, you're told through gesture and demonstration, will be about breath. The Japanese tradition of archery KYD is not about hitting the target, or at least not primarily. The real target is internal, to align your body and breath into one fluid, silent intention. Even your heartbeat is considered part of the draw. A samurai who breathes wrong before releasing the arrow risks not only a miss, but a loss of face, of balance, of presence. The breath begins long before the arrow is lifted. You watch as the senior student, perhaps 14 years old, rises. He stands with his bow cradled in one hand and moves toward the edge of the practice space. One step, two, pause. He lowers his eyes, inhales. Nothing moves, yet something shifts, as if the very air rearranges to accommodate the attention. Then, with a single long exhale, he begins the ritual. He lifts the bow, not in a rush, but as if it weighs only as much as his breath allows. One fluid movement, the arrow is knocked. He draws, holds. And for a moment, the world stops breathing with him. When he releases, the arrow cuts through the morning mist, a soft sound, FWUP, barely louder than a bird's wing. It strikes the target with a thud that seems too gentle to be a success, but it sticks, right of center, the feathers still vibrating. No applause, no reaction. But your stomach flutters, like you've just seen magic. You try next. Your movements are heavier, less fluid. You overdraw, then underdraw. The breath you were supposed to exhale leaks out in a sigh, and the arrow wobbles before leaving the string. It arcs clumsily, lands short, and bounces in the dirt with a sort of resigned plop. The sensei does not flinch. Instead, he beckons you back. His hands move in precise gestures mimicking breath. He draws a slow circle in the air and holds up one finger. One breath. That is your goal. You repeat the sequence a dozen times. 20, 50. Your fingers burn, your arms are trembling. But every time you forget to breathe properly, the sensei's hand lifts not in correction, but as a reminder. His eyes narrow slightly, and again he draws the invisible circle. That evening you are allowed to practice alone for 1 hour, a gift, though no one names it as such. The sky is the color of old silk. You sit in the courtyard, bow beside you, and simply breathe, in through the nose, out through the mouth, in, out. Your body aches less when your breath is calm. Your thoughts settle. The silence no longer presses in, it cushions you. You knock an arrow and try again. This time, your fingers know where to go. Your back muscles remember how to hold. The draw is smoother. You pause at full tension. Hold your breath? No, not hold. Let it ride the tension. Let it hover. And then you release. The arrow flies, a fraction more steady than before. It misses the straw, but it lands straight and far and deep into the dirt. You grin without sound. The night deepens. A breeze rolls in from the mountains. Someone rings a tiny handbell to signal lights out. You bow once to the bow. You bow again to the target, even though it remains unconquered. In bed, you dream of the breath again, of drawing the string not with your muscles, but with your lungs. In the dream, you are weightless. The bow is smoke. The arrow is silence. And this time, it flies true. On the third day, you awaken before the others, not out of ambition, not even out of anxiety, but because something inside you has clicked into rhythm with the stillness around you. It's as if your body has learned to listen to the silence and respond without thinking. You lie there for a while, wrapped in your robe, watching the shadows on the ceiling shift with the rising light. When the first crow caws from a pine branch outside the compound wall, you're already halfway to the practice hall. The air bites your fingers as you slide open the door, but you no longer shiver. The dojo is empty, still blanketed in a kind of hush that feels ancient. You sit, just that. Sit with your legs folded beneath you, bow resting across your lap, breathing in time with the cold. This is what they mean, you think, when they speak of Zanshan, the lingering presence, the continuation of the moment even after action has passed. You haven't loosed an arrow yet this morning, but already your awareness feels drawn and held like a bowstring. Your sensei appears soundlessly, as always, like a wrinkle in space that smooths itself out. He gives a slight nod, barely a nod really, more of a weighted blink, and sits across from you. There is no need to speak. In this place, intention travels further than language. Today's lesson begins not with the bow, but with the body. You are guided, through gesture and example, into slow movements, ritual stretches, stances, and balance drills, designed not to strengthen but to awaken. One exercise involves standing on one foot atop a smooth river stone. Another, balancing the bow across your shoulders like a yoke while turning your waist slowly to face all four corners of the courtyard. It's not about speed. It's not even about form. It's about noticing. When does your heel rise without permission? When does your breath speed up as you try to correct? When does your mind wander ahead, to the arrow that isn't even in your hand yet. The samurai were not taught archery merely as a tool for war. They were taught that the act of shooting was a mirror, polished painfully clean, showing not just your aim but your state of mind. The bow is honest. It exposes hesitation. It reflects frustration. It responds best to the kind of focus that can only be grown through repetition's silent, humble, deliberate repetition. Later, you're asked to draw the bow again, but today there's a variation. Instead of aiming toward the straw targets across the courtyard, you're asked to face inward, to stand before the blank wooden wall at the end of the hall and release your arrows there. There's no bullseye, no judgment, no visible success. The only sound is the soft hiss of the string, the wooden thwack of impact, and the occasional shifting of your feet across the floor. And it is in this quiet, targetless practice that you begin to notice something. When you stop aiming to impress, even if no one's watching, your breath deepens, your shoulders settle. The arrow releases more easily. The bow bends not as a weapon but as a companion. Around midday, the senior student demonstrates a full sequence for the first time. This is Hasatsu, the 8 coordinated stages of shooting. You've seen glimpses of it before, but now you watch each motion in detail. Ashibumi, setting the stance, his feet glide into place as if drawn by string. Dōjō, building the posture, the spine becomes a pillar of breath. Yugame, readying the bow, a silent acknowledgement of the moment to come. Uchiokoshi, raising the bow, the air seems to part before it. Hikawake, drawing down, the arms spread like wings evenly surely. Kai, the full draw, time hangs. Hanari, the release, a flicker like silk unraveling in wind. Zanshin, remaining spirit, his arms lower but his presence does not. The performance is done in near silence, save for the bow's subtle voice, and when it ends, the arrow is embedded dead center in the target. But it's not the hit that moves you, it's the stillness after. The space he leaves behind feels charged, peaceful, full. In the afternoon, you're told, again without words, that you may attempt the full sequence. You fumble through the steps, of course. Your ashibumi is shaky, your kai falters. When you reach Hanari, the arrow jerks sideways as if it's impatient with you. But your zanshin, you hold that. You remain still, even though your shot was crooked. You bow to the arrow's final resting place, even if it barely made the frame. And that night, your sensei places a small folded paper beside your rice bowl at dinner. Inside is one character, chi, key breath, energy, spirit. No speech, no explanation, just the reminder that every arrow begins before the hand moves. Later, when the lamps are extinguished and you lie again on your futon staring into the blackness, you feel your body still rehearsing the motions. Your arms twitch, as if drawing the bow in your dreams. Your breath times itself to an invisible release. And in the silence, you hear something that surprises you, not a sound, exactly, but a rhythm. Your own quiet presence, balanced like an arrow mid-flight, held there by breath and practice and patience. You smile in the dark and say nothing. The 4th day begins with rain. Not a downpour, just a quiet drizzle, the kind that feels like the sky has decided to exhale for a while. It taps lightly on the wooden eaves of the dōjō and pools on the flagstones in the courtyard, each droplet causing a perfect ripple before vanishing into the stone. You're grateful for it. Somehow, the sound of rain fits perfectly with the silence you've grown used to. It gives the day a rhythm without disturbing the stillness, like the bowstring's whisper, only softer. The morning practice is held under the overhang. The straw targets remain dry beneath their covered frames, and the training continues as though nothing has changed. No one complains about the damp. In fact, no one says anything at all. But there's a different kind of focus in the air today, tighter, more introspective. Today's lesson involves observation. You are told through gesture and posture to stand and watch, not to shoot, not to draw, not to practice, just to observe. One by one, the students take turns performing hasatsu, the 8-form ritual you're still learning. You are expected to watch everything: the grip, the angle of the elbows, the placement of feet, the tension in the draw. You're even encouraged to watch their breathing, the subtle rise and fall of the chest, the pause before release. And yet you are told not to judge, not aloud, not inwardly. This is more difficult than it sounds. You find yourself whispering silent critiques in your head: too stiff, too fast, that elbow's too high, that draw was shaky. But then you catch your own breath doing the same, becoming tight, uneven, distracted by thought. You reset. You inhale deeply. The rain helps. Its rhythm is steady, indifferent to your opinions. Slowly you quiet yourself. The arrows fly, some true, some wild. No one reacts either way. That's part of the practice too. Later, your sensei approaches. He doesn't speak. He simply stands beside you and gestures toward a pair of sandals by the doorway, then toward the garden path, where the rain has turned the moss into a carpet of green fire. It's a walk. You go. You are not given a task or a direction. You simply walk the garden path in the drizzle beside your teacher. The scent of rain on stone is sharp and clean. The crows have fallen silent. A toad sits by the edge of the stepping stones, unbothered by your presence. Your sensei pauses before a stone lantern and places one hand on it. He doesn't explain why. You do the same. The cold of the stone seeps into your skin. And just then, in that pause, something becomes clear, not a fact but a feeling. The lesson today wasn't about arrows. It was about perception. That evening after dinner, you're asked to clean the bows. It is not a punishment nor an honor. It is simply the next part of the routine. You take each bow, long, curved, made of laminated bamboo and lacquered wood, and wipe it down with a cloth dipped in water boiled with pine needles. The scent is sharp but earthy. The process takes time. You're not allowed to rush. Every inch of the bow is to be inspected, even the tips, even the notches. And as you clean, you notice. Some bows have slight warps. Others are perfectly straight. Some feel heavier than others, though they are the same length. Each has a personality, a texture, a scent. You begin to recognize them not as tools, but as individuals, as if they too have been practicing silence for years. You finish late. Long after the others have returned to their quarters, you're still on the floor, rubbing a final streak from a stubborn knot in the wood. The oil has seeped into your fingers, staining them faintly. And when the sensei passes by, heading to his own chamber, he stops just long enough to place a single arrow beside you. A gift. The shaft is simple. The feathers are white. The tip is dull, not for killing but for practice, but it is yours now, your first arrow, not borrowed, not communal, yours. You sleep with it beside your futon, like a child clinging to a talisman. That night you dream again of the bow, but differently. Not of shooting, not of tension or targets. This time you dream of carrying it up a mountain trail in silence, just walking. Step by step, breath by breath, each footfall matching your pulse. The bow isn't heavy in the dream. In fact, it seems to support you, keeping your spine straight, your shoulders open. At the summit there is no temple, no fanfare, just a tree. And you tie your arrow to one of its branches without letting go of the bough. The wind catches the fletching, and it flutters like a prayer. On the 5th morning, your arrow finally flies straight. Not to the center, not perfectly, but straight. It slices through the air with a kind of purpose you haven't felt before. The string releases not with a snap, but with a quiet breath. The arrow arcs slightly and lands in the upper right edge of the straw. Not the bullseye, but it sticks, cleanly, confidently. No one reacts, of course. The others continue their forms. Your sensei, seated near the rear of the hall with eyes half-lidded, gives no visible sign that he noticed. But you know. And oddly, now that you've landed your first solid hit, you feel less triumphant than you expected. Not disappointed exactly, just sober. As though you've learned that the arrow is not the destination, it's just a visitor passing through the space between two moments. Your hands are steady, your breath is slow. You retrieve the arrow without fanfare, bow to the target, and return to the line. Today's focus is group practice, and for the first time, your movements are meant to harmonize with others. 5 students across, including you, each standing equidistant, each drawing, aiming, and releasing in a staggered rhythm like breathing in a choir. But that's harder than it sounds. You're too early on your first shot, too late on your second. Your draw catches on your robe. Your wrist trembles because you're trying to match the boy next to you, whose form is almost alarmingly elegant. But when you try to imitate, your own structure collapses like a borrowed mask. After the 4th sequence, the sensei finally rises from his seat. He walks the line, passing behind each of you. No words, just presence. When he reaches you, he places one finger gently on the small of your back and presses, not firmly, just enough to shift your center. You hadn't realized how far forward you were leaning. You adjust. The breath moves more easily, your weight redistributes, and when you draw again, it feels like you're no longer chasing the others, you're simply moving beside them. The arrows fly, some strike, some fall, one clinks off the wooden rim, no one sighs. Afterward, you're assigned to help with a task you've heard whispers about: silent maintenance of the targets. This involves lifting each straw bundle carefully onto a platform, undoing the lashings, rotating the inner stuffing so that the wear is distributed evenly, and readying everything by hand with raw cord soaked in water. The process takes hours, your hands blister, straw pokes your fingers, your knees are wet from kneeling in the grass. But during this work, something interesting happens. The senior student begins humming. It's quiet, almost inaudible. A low tone, not a song, just a resonance, maybe a drone note meant to calm the body. Then another student joins in. A different pitch, still low, still soft. It's not forbidden, apparently, and somehow it doesn't break the silence, it deepens it. By the time the last target is rebound, there are 5 notes hovering in the air like the breath of trees. That evening, your sensei takes you aside after dinner. You kneel across from him in the candlelight. He lights a stick of incense and places a small stone on the floor between you. Then, without a word, he strikes the stone lightly with a piece of bamboo. Click. Then again. Click. And then silence. He looks at you, waits. You pick up the bamboo stick. You strike the stone. Too hard. The sound rings, not clicks. He nods but does not repeat the sound. You try again. This time you hold your breath, you slow your hand, you strike gently. Click. His eyes soften, he nods once. Then he takes the bamboo from your hand, turns it, and places it on the floor before you like a sword. A ritual has passed, a lesson has been received. You return to your futon that night with the sound still echoing faintly in your ribs. The click of bamboo on stone, the rhythm of arrows in flight, the subtle music of 5 bodies moving as one without words. Before you sleep, you touch your own arrow, your first one, still kept neatly beside your sleeping mat, and whisper a word into the night. Not for anyone to hear. Just to remind yourself that you're still here, still learning. On the 6th morning, the fog rolls in heavy, so thick it feels like stepping through a dream. The courtyard is barely visible beyond the wooden veranda. Even the straw targets are lost behind a wall of white. For a moment, it feels as though the world beyond the dōjō has vanished entirely. like the mountain itself has taken a deep breath and held it. Today, you are told, by a flick of the wrist and a nod of the chin, to shoot blind. Not truly blind, not with your eyes closed, but with no visible target. The fog makes it easy. You and the others line up as usual, bows in hand, arrows in quivers, feet set firmly on the wooden planks. But instead of aiming for a mark, you're asked to go through the full ritual hasatsu and release the arrow into the mist. No target, no sound of impact, no feedback at all. At first, the instinct is to resist. You've spent days aligning yourself to something solid, something that responds with thuds or thwacks or silence. Without a target, where do you focus? But that, you realize, is the point. In the absence of something to aim at, all that remains is the form, the process, the internal alignment. The first arrow feels strange, untethered, like letting go of a thought before it's fully formed. It disappears. You hear nothing. No thud, no rustle. Just fog. The second arrow flies with less hesitation. This time, you focus on your breath, the pressure in your spine, the tension in the string, and when you release, something in you releases too. It's oddly freeing. The morning goes like this: draw, breathe, release, vanish, a rhythm with no result. And yet, by the fifth arrow, you begin to feel a kind of trust building, not in your aim, but in your body. After the session, the sensei gestures for you to retrieve your arrows. You cross the courtyard, feet squelching slightly on damp stone, until you reach the line of straw targets that are barely visible through the fog. One arrow has landed square in the center of a target. It is yours. There is no ceremony, no acknowledgement. The sensei does not speak. He simply returns to his place and begins his own practice. You stand there for a while, looking at the arrow. It wobbles slightly in the straw, trembling from its flight, not perfect but true. That afternoon, you're invited, though not in words, to assist in a rare event, a formal demonstration. A minor noble from a nearby province is visiting. Not a daimyo, but someone important enough that the sensei wears a fresh robe, and the arrows are polished until they shine like lacquered bone. You and the other students are tasked with preparing the range. New tatami mats are laid. The straw targets are wrapped in clean cloth. Incense is lit at the corners of the courtyard, not for smell, but for the drifting smoke that helps gauge the wind. The guest arrives under a parasol held by a servant wearing soft robes dyed in expensive greens and blues. He does not bow deeply, but he does watch intently. Your sensei steps forward, bow in hand, and begins. It is not a fast display. In fact, it feels slower than usual. Each step is deliberate, expansive. He is not performing for the noble. He is performing for the air, the bow, the space between. His first arrow flies, strikes the center, as expected. His second flies, lands just beside it. But the third, that one grazes the first, splinters slightly, and sticks into the target with its shaft vibrating. The noble smiles. Your sensei does not. Later that evening, when the guest has gone, the students sit together in silence, retying the arrows that were used. You are given the third one, the splintered shaft, and told to repair it, not replace, repair. You take it to the small workroom and examine it by lamplight. It is beautiful, even in damage. The crack along the shaft looks like lightning. The fletching is only slightly bent. You unwrap the damaged section, smooth it, bind it in fresh cord, and seal it with a bit of resin. The crack will remain, but so will the memory. And that, you learn, is part of the practice too. Not to erase mistakes, but to carry them properly. That night you dream again, this time of fog, endless, weightless fog. You are walking through it with your bow, loosing arrows into nothing. But the arrows sing now, a high, sweet hum, as if each one knows exactly where it's going, even if you never see them land. By the 7th day, the dōjō no longer feels like a foreign place. Your body moves without needing to be told. Your hands find the bow before your eyes do. Even your breath has started to match the rhythm of the space, slow and measured, as if the walls are helping you inhale and exhale. But today, things are different. You're led, not to the courtyard, not to the archery hall, but down a narrow path that winds behind the main buildings. You've never been here. The moss is thicker, the air smells of pine and stone. A wooden gate stands crooked in the brush, half swallowed by time. One of the senior students pushes it open, revealing a smaller, overgrown clearing with a single stone target set in the center. It is cracked, ancient, covered in lichen. Your sensei kneels at the edge of the space and beckons you forward. No words. This, you realize, is something older, more private. Not a test, there are no tests in KYD, but perhaps a rite of some kind. You kneel, you breathe. And then the lesson begins. This is the target that never moves, he gestures. Not just physically, but conceptually. This stone, he implies, has been struck 1,000 times, by masters, by fools, by wind and by time, and your job is not to hit it, it is to listen to what happens when you try. Your first arrow clinks off the surface and vanishes into the brush. Your second misses entirely. Your third lands with a hollow, resonant sound. You wait for direction, for critique. None comes. Instead, the sensei walks over, kneels beside the stone, and places his hand flat against it. You do the same. The stone is cold, unyielding, but beneath your palm you feel the echo of the arrow's strike, not a vibration, something deeper, a kind of presence. He looks at you, not stern, not proud, just present, and then gestures toward the treetops. Above, the wind rustles faintly through the pines. It's your next teacher. You are told, again without speaking, to shoot not at the stone, but with the wind. This sounds impossible, vague, philosophical, but you do as instructed. You wait, you watch the leaves, you listen to the pauses between gusts, and when the air stills, utterly stills, you draw. Release. The arrow moves through the breathless moment and strikes the stone's edge. It doesn't stick, but it doesn't matter. You felt it, the timing, the cooperation between you and the world around you. Later, you are brought back to the main hall and given a rare moment of free practice. You choose a quiet corner and simply sit with the bow. You don't shoot, you don't even raise it, you just breathe. A younger student approaches, maybe 7 or 8. He watches you carefully, mimicking your stillness. You shift slightly, just enough for him to see how your hands rest on the bow. He copies you. Neither of you speak. But something is past. That night, after the lamps have been dimmed, and the compound falls into its now familiar hush, you write a single character in the dust beside your futon. Funkei's wind. And then you blow it away with one quiet breath. On the 8th day, the silence feels heavier, not oppressive, but charged, as if something is about to shift. You sense it in the way the senior students tighten their headbands, in the way the sensei walks the courtyard at dawn, slower than usual, his sandals brushing the stones like a broom. Even the birds seem quieter, chirping in half-hearted staccato before falling mute again. You gather at the training hall, as usual, bows resting across your knees, awaiting instruction. But instead of the familiar rhythm of practice, breathing, drawing, loosing, your sensei introduces something new, the test of balance. It begins with a single arrow. You're instructed to hold it out in your open palm, horizontally, perfectly level, for as long as possible. No bow, no aiming, just the arrow, the balance. At first it's easy. The arrow is light. You hold it without effort, focusing on keeping it parallel to the ground. But time reveals your weaknesses. your wrist begins to shake, your shoulder burns, your mind starts to drift. That's when the arrow wobbles and falls. You pick it up, try again. This time, you focus not on the arrow itself, but on your breath, your center of gravity, the position of your feet. You imagine the arrow floating not in your hand, but in the space between effort and surrender. It lasts longer. Your sensei nods. Later that morning, the exercise evolves. Now you're to walk the length of the dojo, holding the arrow balanced across both hands like an offering. Each step must be silent, equal, a dance of stillness in motion. You misstep at first, your heel taps the floor too hard, the arrow trembles, your knee wobbles. You bow slightly in apology to the arrow, not to anyone watching. But with each pass, you improve. You learn to glide instead of step, to breathe before moving, to let the arrow dictate your tempo. By midday, the next phase is introduced, drawing the bow while balancing a second arrow across your wrist. It's maddening at first. How do you grip the string and maintain level weight? How do you align your shot while a fragile object rests atop your trembling forearm? You don't, not perfectly, not yet. But that's the point. The exercise isn't about performance, it's about awareness. Every tremble becomes a teacher, every drop an invitation to adjust. Eventually, you learn to breathe through it, to move slowly enough that the arrow doesn't roll, to trust your body to remember its place in space. In the afternoon, your sensei does something rare. He speaks. Just one phrase, soft, almost a whisper. To strike true, you must first stand still. Then nothing more. But the words root themselves in you, like bamboo taking hold beneath stone. You repeat them in your head with each breath, each stance, each arrow you carry across the room. Later that evening, the rain returns, and you are sent outside, not to shoot, but to walk the perimeter of the dojo, barefoot, bow in hand in the wet. The exercise is simple. Walk the full circle without making a sound. The stone is slick, the earth is uneven, but your focus sharpens. You place each foot with care. You keep your body aligned. You let the bow become part of your balance, like a cane made of memory. By the time you return to the starting point, soaked to the knees, you feel taller, not because you've grown, but because you've found a kind of uprightness that isn't physical. That night, lying on your futon, you hold your arrow again, not to shoot, not to train, but to listen. You place it across your chest and breathe beneath it. And as you drift toward sleep, you feel the delicate weight of your practice settling over you like a silk sheet, no pressure, just presence. And stillness. The 9th day begins not with silence, but with sound. You're in the middle of your early morning posture drills when it happens. A loud crack followed by a low wum. Everyone freezes, even the birds stop. The noise came from the far end of the courtyard, where the oldest bow in the rack has just split in two under tension. It's the bow of the eldest student. He stands there, motionless, one half of the broken bow still in hand, the other dangling like a wounded wing. For a long time, no one moves. Then your sensei walks over, kneels, and takes the broken pieces gently into his arms, as if cradling a fallen animal. No words are spoken, but the weight of the moment hangs heavy. You spend the rest of the morning helping disassemble the broken bow. It's a reverent process. Each strip of bamboo is laid out in order. The string, though frayed, is coiled and stored. Even the fragments are saved. Nothing is thrown away. In the world of KYD, nothing is useless, not even a shattered bow. Later, the sensei gathers you beneath the awning and presents a scroll. It's worn, frayed at the edges, and smells faintly of ink and camphor. He unrolls it slowly, revealing drawings, not of people, but of arrows, arrows in flight, arrows embedded in trees, arrows stuck into the sides of boats. Each image is annotated with phrases in old kanji. Release with kindness, aim not with the eye, the arrow is the student. You are told, this time in a whisper, that each of these arrows once belonged to someone who practiced here. The drawings are not illustrations, they are records. And your sensei adds one more. With a brush and a small dish of ink, he paints a crooked arrow, bent midshaft, fletching torn. Beneath it the date, no name. The message is clear. Failure is part of the lineage. The afternoon lesson is unexpected. You are brought to a different space, a small enclosed room with a single candle in the center. The walls are lined with sand, no targets, no bows. Just a meditation drill. You are instructed to sit, the candle is lit, and you are told to watch it until it flickers. It doesn't. At first, it's maddening. The flame is steady, too steady. You find your thoughts wandering back to the broken bow, to the sound it made, to the way the elder student didn't flinch. But slowly, something changes. You start to match the flame's rhythm. Your blinking slows, your breath becomes shallow, calm. You begin to notice the way the wax folds inward, the tiny dance of heat just above the wick. And eventually, it does flicker. Not from wind, but from you. That subtle shift, the lean of your spine, the depth of your breath, creates just enough movement in the air to make the flame quiver. Just once. You smile. It's a lesson in patience and in consequence. Even stillness leaves a ripple. That evening, your sensei gathers the students outside. He places the broken bough on a wooden pyre and lights it with a single match. No chanting, no ritual, just the fire crackling gently under the stars. You all stand in a wide circle. The fire reflects in your eyes, your arrows, your thoughts. And when it dies down, he rakes the ashes smooth and leaves the spot untouched. That night, before sleep, you wrap your arrow in cloth and place it under your futon. Not out of fear that it might break, but out of respect that it might one day need to. On the 10th day, you are taken to the forest. No explanation is given. After morning tea, your sensei gestures to the trail behind the kitchen, and one by one, each student gathers their bow, a handful of arrows, and a small satchel of supplies, rice balls, dried persimmons, water in a bamboo flask. You sling your quiver across your back and follow the winding path into the trees. The forest is thick with shade and sound. Birds call, unseen, insects hum. The trail is soft beneath your feet, muffled by centuries of fallen leaves. Sunlight filters through the canopy in broken patterns, like dappled silk. No one speaks. You all move single file, close but not crowded, your bows bumping gently at your sides. After an hour, the path opens into a small glade surrounded by ancient cedar trees. In the center, there stands a weathered wooden post, notched and scarred from years of arrows. This is not a training ground. It feels more like a shrine. There is moss on the edges of the post, and a narrow strip of cloth tied to one side, fluttering faintly in the breeze. Your sensei walks to the center and bows deeply to the post. Then he turns and signals for you to begin. This is forest shooting. No measured distance, no painted target, just the post and your instinct. You're told to choose your own spot anywhere in the glade and take your shot. Not quickly, not competitively, just honestly. You step beneath a tall cedar, steady yourself and breathe. The bow rises. The arrow rests gently on the string. You draw, slow and even. The forest seems to lean in, watching. Release. The arrow flies. It lands just short, thudding into the moss with a soft sound. You nod once, retrieve it, try again. This time, you climb a slight ridge. The angle changes. The air moves differently. You shoot again. Miss. But something in the attempt feels right. The senior students take their turns. One arrow strikes the post cleanly and sticks. Another grazes the wood and falls. Your sensei does not shoot. He walks the perimeter, watching your form, your choices, your breath. By midday, you've shot nearly a dozen times. Only one arrow came close. You sit by a fallen log, chewing a rice ball, sweat cooling on your back, and that's when the lesson sinks in. There is no perfect place to shoot from. Only the place you choose. After lunch, the sensei gives you a new challenge. You're to shoot without standing, from a kneeling position in uneven ground under branches. At first, it's clumsy. Your knees sink into soft dirt, your draw is awkward, the arrow veers wildly into the ferns. But slowly, you adjust. You find how to anchor your elbow against your side, how to use the slope to your advantage, how to wait until the wind hushes before letting go. You land a shot. The arrow doesn't strike the post, but it brushes the hanging cloth, just barely, enough to make it flutter. You lower your bow and smile. As the sun begins to dip, the group gathers one final time. The sensei walks to the post, unties the cloth, and gives it to the student whose arrow came closest. It is not a reward. It is a reminder. You pack up in silence and begin the hike back. The forest feels different now. Not because it has changed, but because you have. Your awareness is sharper. You walk more quietly. Even your heartbeat seems more in tune with the trees. That night, back at the compound, you clean your bow with water and a soft cloth. Your fingers still smell faintly of cedar and soil. You lay your arrows out in a careful row. One of them is slightly bent. You don't discard it. You run your fingers over the curve and nod. Every arrow has a story. Some of them begin in the forest. On the 11th day, the lesson shifts inward again. You arrive in the dojo expecting another round of form drills or maybe blind practice, but instead, your sensei is waiting with a sheet of thin paper and a brush. No ink, just water. Each student is handed a set. You're told, with a motion of the hand, to paint your shot. Not the target, not a person, not even the bow. Just the shot. You hesitate. The brush is soft, the water faint. The paper curls slightly as you wet it. What does a shot look like exactly? A line, a curve, a ripple? You paint. Some students draw arcs, others draw waves. One girl paints a single dot with a tiny bloom around it. Your own hand moves without planning. You brush a slow, wide curve that spirals inward and stops abruptly. The water fades quickly from the paper. Within minutes, your painting is gone. But the gesture remains. That's the point your sensei indicates. The impermanence is the lesson. The mark disappears, but the action lingers in your bones. Later, the dojo is rearranged. The straw targets are removed. In their place, hanging cloth banners that sway with the breeze. These are flutter targets, designed to test not aim but patience. They move constantly. They are not meant to be hit. They are meant to challenge your timing. You stand at the line. Your arrow is ready, but the cloth dances in and out of position like a taunt. Every time you think now, it shifts. The first shot goes wide, the second passes under. By the third, you're sweating, not from effort but restraint. You finally begin to realize you're not shooting at the cloth, you're shooting with it. You wait, you watch its rhythm, you listen to its breath. And when the wind stutters just slightly, you let go. The arrow passes through cleanly, no resistance. You don't need applause. You don't even smile. You simply lower the bow and step back. In the afternoon, you're given an unexpected task, stringing a new bow. The unstrung yumi is taller than you, stiff and unyielding. The act of bending it enough to loop the string is difficult and dangerous. If done improperly, it can snap, hurt you, hurt others. You are instructed to do it with a partner. The two of you kneel. One holds the bow steady. The other loops the string 1 inch at a time, hands trembling, back straining. When it's done, the string hums like a taut whisper. You both sit there, panting softly, eyes on the weapon you've just awakened. There's pride in the silence. That night, the compound holds a rare fire watch. Each student takes a turn tending the small courtyard flame that's kept overnight. It's tradition, older than any current teacher. Your turn comes just before dawn. You wrap yourself in a robe, take your seat near the embers, and watch. The fire doesn't need much, just a little breath now and then, a gentle nudge of kindling. You learn how to feed it without making it roar, how to keep it alive without waking the others. And in that quiet hour, you begin to see your practice differently. The bow is not the fire, it is the breath. The arrow is not the flame, it is the spark. But you are the hand that decides when to feed it. On the 12th day, you're awoken not by footsteps or the rustle of robes, but by the sound of birds. Not many, just one or two calling softly from the trees beyond the compound walls. After days of near total quiet, their voices feel loud, even brazen. You lie in your futon for a moment listening. The calls are irregular, light, like laughter from behind a door. Something about it makes you want to move differently today. In the dojo, the mood has shifted. Your fellow students sense it too. There's a slight lift in the way people walk, a looseness in the shoulders. No one speaks, of course, but the silence feels less like a rule and more like a shared agreement, a kind of reverence. Today, the lesson is moving archery. Until now, every shot has been taken from a fixed stance, feet planted, spine aligned like a pillar. But now you're shown how to move while drawing, to step into the shot, to flow into the release as if following the rhythm of a stream. It's infinitely harder. You begin with a walking draw, slow, deliberate steps while raising the bow, setting the arrow, and preparing to shoot. The floor of the dojo creaks underfoot. Your breath becomes erratic. The timing that felt natural while still now becomes clumsy, out of sync. You miss, again and again. But each miss teaches something. One shows you how your front foot lands too hard. Another shows you that your draw hand tugs too soon. A third reveals that your breath is mistimed, exhaling at the wrong moment. Your sensei walks the line, watching. He says nothing, but he begins to mirror you. He walks beside you, step for step, drawing a bow of his own. Each movement is so precise, so quiet, it's as though his feet never touch the floor. You begin again. This time you mimic his cadence, not your own. You let his presence guide your tempo. And the arrow flies cleaner. Still not perfect, but quieter, straighter. Later, outside in the courtyard, you are asked to repeat the drill on gravel. The challenge is different here, not technical, but psychological. Every step is louder. Every movement risks betraying your location, your intention. The crunch of gravel under your feet feels violent after so many days of hush. And that's the point. You must find the quiet within the noise. So you slow down, you shorten your stride, you allow your feet to settle into the gravel like snow, and when you draw, you wait for the moment when even the birds have paused their song. Then you release. The arrow cuts cleanly. That evening, the students are gathered for a surprise. A visitor has arrived, an elder from a mountain temple, long retired, once a KYD master. He is small, nearly toothless, dressed in plain robes the color of ash. He does not bring a bow. He brings a fan. With it, he performs a demonstration unlike anything you've seen. He steps into the courtyard, raises the fan in two hands, and mimics every motion of the hasatsu, the stance, the draw, the pause, the release. There is no arrow, no string, no tension. And yet you feel something fly. When he finishes, he smiles, not a broad grin, but a knowing curve of the lips. He turns to the students and says gently, "The arrow is never in the bow. It is always in the body." That night, your dreams are strange. You walk through the woods with your bow in hand, but no arrows. Each time you draw the string, a bird flies from the trees. A white heron, a crow, a sparrow. They fly straight, as if guided. You do not aim. You only breathe. The 13th day arrives with a heavy sky, the kind of overcast that dims the world into grayscale and makes every sound feel further away. The dōjō, usually bright with morning light filtering through paper screens, feels smaller, closer. The floor is cool beneath your feet. The air has a scent like wet stone. Today's lesson is stillness in adversity. Your sensei enters in silence as always, but his presence is different. He carries a long, narrow box, lacquered but chipped, and places it gently at the center of the hall. He opens it slowly, revealing something rare, a war bow. Longer than the training Yumi, heavier, slightly warped from age but strung with care. You're not asked to shoot it, not even to touch it. You're asked to observe it while seated in seiza, the traditional kneeling posture. The war bow is not a thing of elegance. It's a thing of burden. It speaks not with music, but with memory. You can almost feel the tension in its limbs, the history of hands that pulled it in battle, the way it must have trembled after each release, not from strain, but from impact. One of the students breathes too loudly. The sensei glances up. Just once. And stillness returns. You begin the day's practice with weighted bows, modern replicas meant to build endurance. You shoot fewer arrows, but each draw takes more effort. Your muscles strain, your breath shortens, your posture begins to falter. And here is the heart of the lesson. Can you maintain serenity while under pressure? Can you find calm even as your shoulder screams and your fingers ache? The first arrows wobble badly. One even drops from the string before release. But no one laughs. In this hall, mistakes are simply notes in your own music. You begin to adjust, not the bow, not the shot, but your approach. You lengthen the pause before each draw. You tighten your stance, engage your core, deepen your breathing. Soon, the effort becomes part of the ritual. Pain becomes rhythm. In the afternoon, you are asked to shoot with your non-dominant hand. There is no expectation of success. The exercise exists to disorient you, to challenge your assumptions, to reintroduce humility. Everything feels wrong. The grip is unfamiliar, the draw clumsy, the release an accident more than a choice. But slowly, strangely, you begin to feel something resembling progress. Because when your dominant hand is denied, your awareness sharpens elsewhere. You notice the angle of your elbow, the position of your jaw, the way your heel presses into the floor, all things you took for granted before. One arrow hits. Barely. But it sticks. Your smile, small and private, stays with you through the rest of the day. Later that evening, just as the lamps are being lit, the sensei summons you one by one for an individual form check. This is rare. You kneel, he watches. You rise, he nods. You draw, you breathe, you pause. And when you release, nothing is said. But after, he places something in your palm, a stone. Smooth, small, rounded, not marked. He closes your fingers over it and steps away. No explanation. That night, as you lie on your futon with the stone in your hand, you try to guess its meaning. A reward, a reminder. You roll it between your fingers. It warms in your palm. You begin to understand it is neither. It is just presence. Solid, grounded, weight without judgment. A reminder that even in silence, even in effort, something is being held. And so are you. On the 14th day, the rain returns, not soft and misting, but steady, insistent, as though the mountains have decided to speak in water. It taps on the roof tiles like fingers drumming on wood, a constant, uneven rhythm that fills the silence you've grown used to. The courtyard is slick with puddles. The targets have been moved under cover. The bows remain indoors, resting on their stands like sleeping animals. But your sensei doesn't head to the dojo. Instead, he leads you to the open walkway just outside, where the rain is visible but the overhang keeps you dry. He places a small bowl on the floor, ceramic, cracked, filled to the brim. Then he motions, "Walk past it." That's all. Walk from one end of the walkway to the other, past the bowl, without disturbing the water. You try. Your first step is cautious, but your foot thuds just enough to send a ripple across the surface. Not much, but it moves. Your sensei says nothing. Another student takes their turn. They do better, only a slight tremor. Again and again. Each of you tries, and each time the water speaks. It's a lesson in impact. Not physical, but energetic. The bowl is not the target. The bowl is the proof. Your movement carries consequences, whether you intend them or not. Later, back in the dojo, you shoot one arrow, just one. Then you wait. Your sensei asks, not in words but in posture, that you watch how long its motion continues. Not the flight, which ends in a second, but the stillness after. The target sways, the feathers quiver, the silence thickens. You begin to notice. The shot doesn't end when the arrow lands. It ends when the air returns to stillness. Afterward, you're sent to the storeroom, where boughs long out of use hang in shadows. You're instructed to clean one. It is old. The wood is dark with age, the grip worn to velvet. As you wipe it with cloth and oil, you notice the curve isn't perfect. There are scars, small nicks, a place where the lacquer has peeled. But still, it holds. The bow hums faintly under your hands, as though remembering. You return it to its place gently, almost reverently. It may never be used again, but its presence matters. In the evening, a visiting monk is allowed to speak, a rare permission in the dojo's world of quiet. He tells a story about a samurai who spent 3 years training to shoot from horseback. He practiced daily. He studied form, he recited prayers, and when the time came to ride and shoot before the shogun, his horse stumbled. The arrow went wide. But the shogun did not frown. Instead, he asked the samurai, "Did your breath remain true?" The samurai bowed, ashamed. "No, my lord, it followed the horse." The shogun nodded. "Then return. Train your breath to ride first." The monk smiles and bows. That is the story. That night, you lie awake longer than usual. The rain has softened but still whispers on the roof. You place your stone, your gift from yesterday, beside your futon. You imagine the bowl of water. You imagine walking past it, lighter, more careful. You dream of arrows that land so softly they don't shake a single leaf. On the 15th day, you are given a mask. Not a theatrical one, not for no or kabuki. This is simple. Cloth tied behind your head, covering your eyes. It smells faintly of old cedar and sweat, and when you slip it on, the world disappears. This is the beginning of Mokoteki Shage, blind archery. At first, it feels absurd. How can you shoot what you cannot see? But then again, you've spent 2 weeks learning that vision isn't the most reliable sense in the dojo. You've been taught to breathe before you see, to feel before you strike. This is simply the next step. You begin with stance drills. Your sensei touches your heel with a stick just lightly to correct your position, then your elbow, then the bowstring. You listen with your skin. You lift the bow slowly, you draw. You hold the arrow in tension. And when you release, the air itself shifts. There is no sound of a hit, no thud, but your sensei taps the floor gently once with his staff. That's the signal, not for a strike but for correct form. You try again. Each shot becomes less about where the arrow lands and more about where your breath is when you let go. Are you calm? Are you aligned? Are you honest? Later, the blindfold comes off, and the room feels bright, invasive. Your eyes struggle to adjust. You're asked to shoot again, this time with sight. And now the strange part, you miss more. The distraction of the target pulls your focus outward, your shoulders tense, your breath shortens, your awareness dims. You laugh quietly, but it escapes, and your sensei smiles. For the rest of the day, you alternate between sighted and blind practice. You begin to notice subtle patterns. Your right foot always shifts too far forward when you can see. Your release is smoother when you can't. Your heartbeat calms faster in the dark. By evening, you're exhausted, not from movement but from attention. And so your final task is stillness. You are told to sit with your bow across your lap and your blindfold on for an hour. Just sit. You listen. To the wind through bamboo, to the shuffle of feet, to the sigh of cloth, to your own breath, long and slow, like water down stone. Time slips. And when the hour ends and the blindfold comes off, the world has not changed. But you have. That night your dreams are void of images. They are only sound. A single bowstring. Drawn. Held. Released. On the 16th day, a visitor arrives at dawn, an elderly woman in plain robes, carrying a single arrow in a cloth wrap. She walks with a cane and does not bow deeply, but everyone bows deeply to her, even your sensei. She is not a warrior, not anymore, but you learn through whispered gestures and reverent glances that she once was, not with a sword, but with a bow so precise she was said to strike candle wicks from across a field, blindfolded. She stays only for the morning, and she teaches no technique. Instead, she tells a story. You are all gathered beneath the covered walkway, the rain drumming a slow cadence on the roof above. She unwraps her arrow and holds it out for everyone to see, crooked, featherless, the shaft dark with age. It would not fly, not anymore. This was my last arrow, she says. Her voice is dry as paper. It never left the bow. There's a pause. She explains. On the day she meant to release it, her hand stopped. Not from fear, not from pain, but from something else, an intuition, a knowing, that the arrow had already flown in a way, that she had already made her point even without the flight. So I kept it, she says, to remind me that not every arrow must be loosed. She places the arrow on the floor before you and steps back. That becomes today's lesson. Each student is handed an arrow new, unblemished. You are instructed to carry it all day, but you may not shoot it, you may not draw it. You simply carry it. It becomes heavy, not in the hand, but in the mind. As you walk the garden path, stretch before practice, sip water between drills, the arrow is with you. When you bow to your sensei, it is across your knees. When you kneel for meditation, it rests beside your palm. It is a quiet burden, a companion, a question. By late afternoon, the weight has changed. You no longer feel eager to release it. You feel protective. That evening, your sensei gives you a scroll with only 2 characters on it. Jijian Shisen, the unfired arrow. You place the scroll beside your futon, unroll it slightly, and reread the characters until the candle dims. That night, your dream is short. You are on a field, wind brushing tall grass. Your bow is strung, your arrow is ready. But instead of shooting, you lay the arrow down in the grass and walk away. Behind you, the arrow hums just once and disappears. On the 17th day, the sun returns. After days of fog and drizzle, the sky breaks open into a crisp blue, and the mountains reappear like giants waking from a nap. The courtyard, still damp, glows with reflected light. Everything feels more vivid, the grain of the wood beneath your feet, the scent of pine in the air, the texture of the bow in your grip. The mood in the compound is lighter too. Students move with subtle grace, but there's a quiet anticipation buzzing beneath the stillness. Today is the distance test. Until now, all your shots have been from the standard dōjō line, just enough to challenge your form, but not your nerve. But today the targets are moved, farther, much farther, almost double the distance. From where you stand now, the straw targets look like coins pinned to the horizon. Your breath quickens, not from fear, from respect. Hitting the target from this range isn't just about strength, it's about trust, in the bow, in the wind, in the self. You watch the senior student go first. She draws with a calm you can only hope to borrow, looses the arrow, and it arcs so slowly it seems to hang in the air like a question. Then thump. Right of center. No celebration, just a nod. Your turn comes sooner than expected. You step into position. The distance yawns in front of you. For a moment you feel small. Then you remember, size doesn't matter when form is true. You knock the arrow. Draw. And wait. The wind whispers through the courtyard. A sparrow lifts from the rooftop, cutting a small arc overhead. You release. The arrow flies in a long, lazy curve. It lands short. Not by much, but enough. You bow, retrieve it, try again. This time you breathe deeper, slower. You imagine the path, not straight but curved like a hill. You draw as if you're painting the arc into the sky. And when the arrow lands, it touches the bottom edge of the target. A kiss, not a strike. But it counts. Later, your sensei gathers you all beneath the largest tree in the compound. He tells a story about a student long ago who could not strike the target even after months of practice. One day, the sensei handed him a ladle and pointed to a pot of rice. "Hit the bottom of the pot," he said. The student struck it with the ladle. "Too loud," said the master. The student tried again. Softer, quieter. Over and over, until the ladle barely made a sound. "Now," said the master, "shoot." The student did, and hit the target cleanly. Because he had learned to feel impact before the strike. You carry that with you into the evening session. One final arrow, one final try. You step into the fading light. The sun touches the horizon, painting gold across the grass. You draw. You breathe. You release. And this time, you don't watch the arrow. You watch the stillness it leaves behind. On the 18th day, the lesson has no bow. Not at first. You gather in the dojo as usual, dressed and ready, but the bows remain on their racks untouched. Instead, your sensei enters with something unexpected, a scroll tightly rolled, bound with red thread. He holds it up and announces, not loudly, not even sternly, but clearly, "Each of you has 3 hours. Return with a story." A pause follows. No other instruction is given. The students disperse slowly, exchanging glances but asking no questions. Some head toward the forest trail. Others linger around the edges of the compound. A few simply sit. You, too, are left to decide. You take your arrow, your silent companion now for days, and walk down the narrow path toward the old bamboo grove. The air is still cool, touched with the scent of earth and young shoots. A breeze rustles the leaves high above, a sound like applause heard through sleep. You find a stone by a stream and sit. The world moves gently around you. At first your mind protests. What story are you supposed to find? There is no battle here, no drama, just birds, wind, water, breath. But that's when you notice something. A tiny frog, smaller than your thumb, perched on a bamboo stalk. It stares at you. You stare back. It doesn't blink. You begin to match its stillness. 10 minutes pass, maybe more. Eventually, the frog jumps, a perfect arc. It lands in the shallow stream, barely a splash, then vanishes. You remain seated, not waiting, just aware. Later, you return to the dojo, scroll still unopened. The sensei is waiting. Each student shares what they've brought. One tells of a fallen tree with fresh buds, another a hawk in mid-dive, another of watching their own reflection ripple and vanish when a breeze disturbed a pond. When your turn comes, you step forward, unfold the scroll slowly, and on the paper you write just 3 words. The frog waited. The sensei reads it, nods, says nothing. Then he finally gestures toward the bows. You train for the rest of the day with renewed focus, not harder, not faster, but quieter. Every draw feels less like a task and more like a reply, a response to a world that sometimes just waits to see if you're paying attention. That night, by candlelight, you sketch a tiny frog in the corner of your practice journal. You label it with 1 word: teacher. On the 19th day, the dojo is quiet, but not empty. You wake to find the others already at practice. No bell sounded, no footsteps stirred you. They simply began without you. There's no reprimand, only a subtle sense of being out of step, like arriving at a song just after the melody has started. You rush slightly, a mistake, your breath shortens, your robe snags, your bow feels heavier than usual. Your sensei notices. He says nothing. But today's lesson is about returning to center. Not about making up for lost time, not about pushing harder, it's about realignment. You begin with slow posture drills. Foot placement, knee position, spine, breath. You're guided gently to notice how even the smallest misalignment, just a slight tilt of the head, an uneven shoulder, can cause the whole body to fall out of harmony, and the more you rush, the more you lose your center. So you stop. You begin again. This time slower, with intention. With apology, not to anyone else, but to yourself. The arrows fly better after that. Not perfectly, but more honestly. Later, you're taken to a small, rarely used garden behind the shrine, where a series of flat stones have been laid in a circle. Your sensei instructs each of you to walk the stones, barefoot, bow in hand, without breaking the rhythm of your breath. Some of the stones wobble, some are damp with moss. You step carefully. You wobble, your foot slips, your toe stubs. But you remain upright. You laugh once quietly under your breath, and from the corner of your eye you think you see your sensei's mouth twitch upward, just slightly. The exercise continues until dusk. One student falls completely off the stones. No one helps them up. They rise on their own. That too is the lesson. In the evening, your final task is symbolic. You are given your original arrow, the one you've carried for more than a week, and asked to place it in a bowl of warm water. Not to damage it, but to soften the glue on the fletching. Your fingers tremble as you loosen the thread. The feathers come away gently. You're not told what to do next. You sit with the bare shaft in your lap, now vulnerable, unfinished. And you realize it's time to refletch. To begin again, to apply what you've learned. To craft not just the shot, but the thing that carries it. You dry the arrow, you smooth it with cloth, you hold it to the light. Tomorrow, you'll bind it with new feathers. Tonight it rests beside you, bare and ready. You sleep lightly, your breath even, your center found once more. On the 20th day, you begin with feathers. 3 of them, long, white, soft but firm, are set before you on a strip of cloth. Your arrow lies beside them, stripped of its old fletching, its shaft bare and smooth. This is no longer a weapon or even a tool. It's a question. What kind of arrow do you want to carry forward? The fletching process is meticulous. You're given a tiny pot of glue, a thin thread, and a curved needle. The sensei shows you once, only once, how to line the first feather, how to angle it just slightly so that the arrow spins in flight, how to bind it with thread tight enough to hold but not so tight it warps the shaft. Then you begin. Your hands shake a little, not from nerves but from reverence. This is the part no one sees, the hidden labor behind each perfect shot, the slow work, the quiet craftsmanship. It takes over an hour to place all 3 feathers. You finish. The arrow is not flawless. One feather is slightly crooked, the thread overlaps, but it's yours, entirely yours. Your sensei nods once when you present it. He runs one finger along the shaft, testing its spine, then he hands it back without a word. You bow. Later on the range, you're told to use only that arrow for the day. One arrow, one shot at a time. You walk to the line. Breathe. Draw. Release. The arrow arcs, wobbles slightly, but straightens mid-flight. It hits. Not the center, but close enough to hum. You retrieve it carefully. You do this all day. One arrow, shoot, retrieve, repeat. Each time you notice something new. The way the feather brushes your thumb, the hiss of air as it leaves, the feel of its shaft growing warm in your hand after each flight. By evening, your arrow is no longer just an arrow. It's a journal. Each mark a line of text, each flight a sentence. It tells a story only you can read. And then, your sensei gathers the students one more time. He draws a line in the sand of the courtyard, then steps back. Now he says softly, "Shoot without aiming." You freeze. Is it a trick? You knock the arrow. Breathe. Close your eyes. And draw. This time you don't think of distance, or targets, or precision. You think of the path, the practice, the fletching, the feeling of the bow pulling back against your hand. You release. There is no sound of impact. But there is stillness. When you open your eyes, your arrow stands upright in the sand. Not a bullseye, not a miracle. Just truth. Planted, steady, present. Your sensei bows not to the shot, but to you. And you bow in return, not from habit, but from gratitude. That night, you sleep with the arrow beside your pillow. It no longer feels like a tool. It feels like a part of you. On the 21st day, you are led into the mountains. Not with a full class, just you, one senior student, and your sensei. No bows, no arrows, just walking sticks and a quiet rhythm of feet on stone. The trail is narrow and steep, winding through thick groves of cypress and across small wooden bridges slick with moss. You don't ask where you're going. You don't ask why. You've learned by now that questions are often best answered by silence. Hours pass. Eventually, you reach a plateau. A flat space in the forest circled by stones, open to the sky. In its center, a single tree, tall, straight, old. Its bark is silvered with age, its branches long and still. This, you're told, is the place of Keiya no Shaji, a phrase that roughly means temple without walls. It is where your sensei trained, long before the current dojo was built, before there were targets, before there were ranks. You kneel. The wind speaks through the branches. You are handed a bow, not your own, a bow of plain bamboo, no lacquer, no markings, no string. You are told to draw it. At first it feels like a joke. There is no resistance, no sound, no arrow. But the senior student kneels across from you and draws his bow in tandem. You follow. Together, you move through the entire sequence of Hasatsu, the 8 forms, without loosing anything. It feels like pantomime, like prayer, like a dance between ghosts. You do this again, and again. By the 5th repetition, something shifts. Your spine aligns more naturally. Your draw is slower, deeper. Your breath expands into the space between trees. And by the 10th time, you feel it. The bow is not empty. It is full of memory. You're told to rest. The senior student builds a small fire from twigs and dried pine needles. your sensei prepares tea, boiling water in a battered kettle with a handle wrapped in string. You drink. The tea is earthy, bitter, grounding. Then the senior student speaks, not loudly but clearly. He says, "There is a point where the bow disappears." Your sensei nods. You understand, not fully, but enough. Before returning, you are asked to choose a single stone from the circle. You pick one, smooth, flat, warm from the sun. Your sensei takes it in his palm, weighs it, then hands it back. You carry the weight now. The hike down is slower, your legs ache, but your heart is light. You return to the compound in the dark. No one else is awake. You sit by the candlelight in the corner of the dojo and draw the tree from memory. Not perfectly, not as it looked, but as it felt. And in your sketch, the branches reach outward not to grasp but to let go. On the 22nd day, your sensei returns your bow. It's not that it was ever taken, but today he presents it to you, held in both hands like something ceremonial. You bow as you receive it, and though the action is familiar, this time it feels different. The bow is lighter, or perhaps your arms are stronger, or perhaps you're no longer carrying all the uncertainty that once made the bow feel heavy. Your task for the day is not shooting, it's inspection. Every part of the bow is to be checked, slowly and carefully. You begin with the string, feeling for frays, uneven tension, then the grip, checking for wear, for sweat-softened wood, then the limbs of the bow, running your fingers along the curve like reading Braille. This is not about maintenance. It's about relationship. How well do you know your bow? Can you sense what it needs? Can you hear when it speaks, not in sound but in imbalance? The rest of the morning is spent in shadow practice, drawing without arrows, moving through the form again and again, this time with emphasis on expansion. Your sensei explains briefly, sparingly, that a bow must not be drawn with force. It must be opened like a door. The arrow must be released not with a push, but with a letting go. You are not launching it, he says, you are freeing it. That sticks with you. In the afternoon, he lays out 5 arrows before you. Each one different. One is old, wood dark, fletching faded. One is thick, heavy, built for strong wind. One is narrow, almost delicate. One is slightly curved, flawed, but functional. The last is perfectly balanced, gleaming with polish. You are told to shoot each one. Same bow, same form, same breath. But each arrow flies differently. The old one drifts. The heavy one drops. The delicate one hums. The curved one spins wildly. The polished one sails clean. Then you are told, choose one to keep. You don't choose the perfect one. You choose the curved arrow. Because when it flew, something in its struggle felt honest. That evening, your sensei sits with you by the small stone garden. He asks softly what your bow has taught you. You answer without words. You draw it once, slowly. Breathe. Release nothing. And let the silence land. On the 23rd day, you're asked to shoot in front of a mirror. It's a polished bronze plate, not perfectly reflective, and just wide enough to show your full form at a slight distance. The setup is simple. Your stance line is marked on the dojo floor, the target sits behind you, and the mirror stands in front. This is reverse archery, not because your arrow travels backward, but because your attention does. You shoot, not watching the target but watching yourself. At first, it's deeply unsettling. Every flaw becomes visible. Every twitch in your shoulder, every wobble in your knees, every glance to the side. The mirror shows not only posture but presence, or the lack of it. Your first arrow flies wide. You already knew it would. But your second, still imperfect, feels different. You saw it happen. You didn't just aim, you witnessed. The point of this drill isn't performance, it's honesty. Can you watch yourself without flinching? Can you meet your own gaze in the moment of release? Can you bear to see your habits, your hesitations, your tension, without correcting, without hiding? Your sensei watches from the side. He doesn't correct you today. This lesson, he implies, isn't his to teach. Only the mirror can do that. Midday arrives. The mirror is removed. The bows are set aside. You are asked to sit. Your sensei brings out a calligraphy brush and places a blank strip of paper before you. You may write one thing, he says. Just one. Some students write kanji: wind, focus, breath. Others write names, gestures, questions. When your turn comes, you pause. Then slowly you write. Miru, to see. Not to watch, not to look, but to see deeply. Your sensei nods. He takes the paper, rolls it, tucks it into a bamboo tube. Tomorrow, he says, we bury these. That night, you sit by the candle, brushing your hand over your arrow, the curved one. You align it beside your bow. You breathe just once deeply. And in your reflection, faint and wavering on the lacquered wood of the bow, you see yourself. Not perfectly, but clearly. On the 24th day, the air is already warm when you wake. The sky is cloudless, the stone paths are dry, the shadows of the pine trees stretch long and patient across the courtyard. You feel it in your bones. Today is a day of endings, not final, not sharp, but a soft closing, a page turning. After breakfast, the students gather by the garden where the bamboo grows thick and tall. Your sensei arrives, carrying the bamboo tube, the one with yesterday's scrolls. He does not speak. He does not need to. Each student is handed a spade. You dig. A small hole, just enough to bury the scrolls upright like seeds. When it's your turn, your hands are steady. You place your tube in the earth, cover it gently, press the soil flat. The paper inside contains your word, to see. As you step back, the wind picks up, just enough to move the grass. The burial is not a ritual of mourning. It's an offering. You are not discarding your lesson, you are planting it, so that perhaps in time someone else might find it and wonder who learned this here, and what did they become. The rest of the morning is devoted to silence, true silence, not just the absence of speech, but a deliberate quieting of movement, effort, expectation. You do not shoot. You do not stretch. You sit with your bow beside you and simply breathe. It is more difficult than it sounds. In the afternoon, your sensei speaks again, rare, measured. Tomorrow, he says, you shoot your final arrow. No ceremony, no crowd, just one arrow from you to the world. You are to prepare, not your aim, but your intent. So you spend the evening walking the grounds. Every place you trained, you revisit. The stone where you first balanced. The mossy wall where your arrow once bounced back. The corner where you stitched fletching in candlelight. You bow to each place. Not deeply, just enough. Before bed, you write a short note and tie it to your arrow. No one tells you to do this, you just feel it's time. The note is simple. 3 lines. Not for the target, not for the master, for the moment between. You place the arrow beside your futon and sleep, deeply, calmly, like the arrow is already flying. The final day begins before dawn. You wake before the bell, before the light. The air is still cool, tinged with cedar and dew. Your breath clouds faintly as you rise. Around the compound no one speaks. Footsteps are soft, bows are polished in silence, arrows are handled like relics. You dress with care, each fold of your robe aligned, your belt tied not too tight, not too loose. You lift your bow and feel its weight, not heavy, not light, just familiar. Your arrow, the one you've carried, repaired, refletched, nearly buried, is already waiting. You tie the note back to it, not as decoration, but as remembrance. Not for the target, not for the master, for the moment between. The students gather slowly in the courtyard. The targets have been removed. In their place is open space, grass, stone, wind. Nothing to aim at, everything to aim toward. Your sensei stands beside the elder tree and bows once. This is it. One arrow. You step forward when your name is called. Kneel, breathe. The bow rises in your hand like something ancient, alive. Ashibumi, your stance finds the earth. Dōjō, your posture finds the sky. Yugame, the readiness settles into your bones. Uchiokoshi, you lift the bow. Hikawake, you draw. Tai, you hold, not the tension but the stillness. Hanari, you release. No sound. No target. No applause. But the arrow flies. High, clean, quiet. It lands somewhere unseen. And that's enough. You bow to the space where it vanished. Then you return to the line. One by one the others shoot. Some arrows fall short. Some sail wide. All are accepted. All are honored. No one retrieves them. Not this time. They are left where they landed, as offerings to the wind, to memory, to whatever future might step quietly through this place and wonder who once stood here. That evening, your sensei gathers everyone for the last time. There is tea and rice and silence. He does not speak of progress or rank or next steps. He simply says, "You carry the bow now." And that's it. You sleep once more on your futon, your bow beside you. Not because you still need to train, but because it feels strange to sleep without it. And now, as the lanterns dim and the courtyard fades into shadow, you let your breath slow. The lessons no longer press, the rituals no longer demand. They simply exist now, woven into your muscles, your patience, your gaze. You think of the arrow still resting in the grass, far beyond the wall. Or maybe it's lodged in a tree, maybe a bird perched on it, maybe the wind carried it further than anyone could track. That arrow is no longer yours. It never really was. You remember the first time you drew a bow, how awkward your fingers felt, how loud your breathing seemed. You remember the cracked bow that snapped in the elder's hands, the frog by the stream, the blindfold, the mirror, the bowl of water, the weight of the stone. Each one taught something. And together, they didn't make you better, they made you quieter. Not just in sound, but in spirit. You are no longer the one who asks, "Did I hit the target?" You are the one who asks, "Did I breathe fully?" And in the stillness of this last evening, you feel no need to measure yourself. You simply rest. The bow lies nearby, unstrung now, sleeping. Your arrow, somewhere in the dark, carries the weight of your practice. And in your chest, the quiet hum of Zanshin, the remaining spirit, lingers, like a final note of a song too soft to end. Good night. Sleep well. The dojo is quiet now. And so are you.